A long time ago, on a planet not so far away, there was a revolution. The Industrial Revolution changed the lives of many, as well as the course of history. Join us now as we travel through time and space to learn about the Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution had many facets, including the introduction of mass production, the advancement of mechanical tools, and an overall reorganization of society. Today, we will focus on the Agricultural Revolution, trade, and inventiveness in Great Britain. The Agricultural Revolution stimulated trade and inventiveness in Great Britain because it created a food surplus, a population increase, and more genetic diversity in Great Britain. The technical definition of the Agricultural Revolution is the transformation of farming in the 18th century that resulted from new crops, improvements in cultivation techniques, and livestock breeding, and the consolidation of small holdings into the large farms from which tenants and sharecroppers were forcibly expelled.
Crop rotation.
The discovery of the nitrogen cycle was a big influence on the system of crop rotation. Plants that replenished the nitrogen in the ground, such as beans, eventually became more common. The four-field system was a new, more efficient way of growing crops. The four-field system allowed 4 different crops to be grown at one time, with all land used and no land left to fallow, as it regained nutrients that the same crop had previously leached out of the soil year after year. It allowed more nutrients to remain in the soil and better crops.
Selective breeding.
In England, Robert Bakewell and Thomas Koch introduced selective breeding and inbreeding in order to reduce genetic diversity in the mid-18th century. Bakewell crossbred the Lincoln and Longhorn sheep to produce the new Leicester variety. These methods proved successful in the production of larger, more profitable livestock. Mules, for example, were a cross between a horse and a donkey and were used as replacements for manpower. Today, selective breeding has extended into more obscure realms, creating animals such as ligers.
Enclosure movement.
The enclosure movement was a seemingly innocent series of acts, the placing of fences around land so that small farmers became tenant farmers under a larger landowner. That had a huge effect on the entire world. The tenant farmers who previously grew crops they knew would produce were now able to experiment with different crops.
Inventiveness in Great Britain.
Many inventions contributed to the Industrial Revolution, and lots of inventors were from Great Britain.
Abraham Darby was a British man who discovered the efficiency of coal as fuel. Darby began to burn coal instead of charcoal because the coal was cheaper, easier, and worked just as well as the charcoal.
John Kay invented the flying shuttle, a loom that spun thread in a cloth faster and easier than the previously tedious machines.
George Stephenson invented the rocket railway train, which is said to have reached a whopping 20 miles per hour. Stephenson's invention used pistons to power the train, which was supposedly the first train to kill a person.
Henry Bessemer invented the aptly named Bessemer steel production machine. This was basically a huge vat that allowed steel to be produced easily, quickly, and most importantly, cheaply. Although the steel wasn't as high quality as other steel or even wrought iron, it was the most commonly used metal due to its low price.
Adam Smith, the brilliant economist and author of The Wealth of Nations, watched the Industrial Revolution unfold. Smith observed that
much labor is facilitated in a bridge by the application of proper machinery. In the first fire engines, a bore was constantly employed to open and shut alternately the communication between the boiler and the cylinder, according as the piston either ascended or descended. One of those boys, who loved to play with his companions, observed that by tying a string from the handle of the valve which opened this communication to another part of the machine, the valve would open and shut without his assistance, and leave him at liberty to divert himself with his playfellows. One of the greatest improvements that has been made upon this machine, since it was first invented, was in this manner the discovery of a boor who wanted to save his own labor.
As the textile industry was a major industry during the Industrial Revolution, wheat and cotton outputs were affected by inventions that came from outside of Great Britain as well as within it. Eli Whitney's cotton gin made cotton production much faster, which affected the entire world as trade brought United States cotton to 5 continents.
Trade. flow of goods during the Industrial Revolution was, for the first time ever, not limited by oceans or mountains. Steamships allowed the Atlantic to be crossed, and train tracks moved goods much faster and more efficiently. Goods from the U.S. flowed into Great Britain, which sent goods to India in exchange for luxuries such as spices. Dyes came from Germany, covering the world in colors that India was previously unable to provide. This supply and demand affected the Industrial Revolution as it spurred more inventiveness, which in turn affected the Agricultural Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a period in history in which life was changed for the better. Thanks to the brilliant people who spurred this movement, we can lead the privileged lives we have today.
Hey, hee, hi, ho, picking cotton all day. Hey, hee, hi, ho, just a picking away. Oh, white folks knows I'm working, they know 'twon't be no shirking. Hee, hi, ho, I knows I'll get my pay. Ain't no use kicking, 'cause I'll be picking till all my children is grown. Then I'll shuffle and skip and shuffle to have a field of my own.
I wish we could afford more land so we could grow different crops. Why the land? This is what happened to me. Honey, why the happened to us?
I hear you on the other side of the fence, and I don't appreciate your language. We have purchased this land, and if you want food, you have to work on it for us. I have also taken your horse. So, it's my horse now.
We'll work for you if we can make a load of crops.
You can experiment with anything you want, as long as I get as much as I want.
Finn.